Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazzadio. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Hiby FC6, which is Hiby's newest flagship USB dongle style DAC. However, this takes a little bit of a different approach and deviates from the typical Delta Sigma architecture and instead implements R2R technology like another one of Hiby's R2R devices, the RS2. Now, this is not the only R2R dongle style DAC out there. However, it is the only one of two, the other one being the RU6. Unfortunately, I don't have that one to compare it with directly. However, I will be doing some comparisons with some of my other favorite USB DACs, and then finally we'll talk about where I feel it stands in terms of value and overall performance. But first, let's go over what's included in the package with the FC6. Of course, we have the FC6 itself. It also comes with its own case, which is kind of unusual, but very cool. It also comes with a nice cover and a Type C to Type C and a USB Type A to Type C cable as well. Now, if you take a look at the outside of the FC6, you'll see that on the left there is a volume control rocker that also functions as a selector when you're navigating the internal menu. On the top, we have a USB Type C input, and on the bottom, a single-ended 3.5 millimeter output, and it does not have a balanced output. Then on the front, there's a selector button and a color display. The FC6 does cost $300, and it's actually the most expensive portable USB DAC that I own. Now, as for specifications, again, the FC6 uses R2R DAC technology in combination with dual OPA 1622 amp chips, and it outputs 100 milliwatts of power out of the 3.5 output. As for audio formats, it supports up to 32-bit PCM and DSD 512, and it also supports MQA 8x unfolding. The FC6 also works with the Hiby Music app using its exclusive USB mode to stream bit-perfect audio to the FC6. The FC6 also gives you 5 different filter options, which I did try and I didn't really notice a significant difference. So all of my testing was done in the default filter. And as far as power output, again, the FC6 only gives you about 100 milliwatts of power out of the 3.5 and 1.8 volts of output, which on paper isn't a lot, but I have to say I was pretty impressed when I plugged my 300 ohm Sivga SV023 in, and it actually had no problem driving them, and not just driving them okay, it actually sounded very, very nice. So that was pretty impressive. Okay, so let's talk about the sound of the FC6. So what is it that sets R2R DACs apart from other DACs that use the typical Delta Sigma technology? And I'm not an engineer, but from what I understand, it basically takes the incoming audio signal and it processes it using a resistor ladder network, and the incoming signal doesn't go through as many conversions as it does using the Delta Sigma technology. But the idea is, again, from what I understand, that R2R is a more pure method of basically processing the incoming audio signal. But of course, the question is as to whether or not it sounds significantly different or even better than my other portable USB DACs that use, again, the typical Delta Sigma technology. Well, it does sound different, at least to my ears. And if I had to summarize that difference, it would be, the only way I could describe it is as having a more analog or a more natural presentation as opposed to a digital presentation. And it's not something I only noticed with the FC6. I also have the other R2R style DACs like the Gustard R26 that I use for my home audio system and the Hiby RS2. And there are other R2R devices I've heard that have these same characteristics. But yes, the FC6 also has that same analog presentation. And while it may be subtle, it's definitely noticeable. And there is enough of a difference so that when I unplug from one of my other favorite USB DACs, for example, the FIO BTR7, and then plug into the FC6, I know I'm going to have a different type of listening experience. Now, as far as the overall presentation, the overall sound presentation of the FC6, it is neutral and what I would consider uncolored. So no part of the sound stands out or is pronounced in any way. But if you break the sound down just a little more, starting with the bass of the FC6 is very clean and it has excellent slam and impact. Mid bass and lower mid clarity is also very good. But my favorite aspect of the sound of the FC6 is without a doubt the mid-range, because while that natural R2R sound does carry throughout the entire frequency spectrum, where I noticed it the most was in the mid-range, because of course that's where most of the vocals and instruments are represented. And again, there's something about the way the FC6 portrays them that none of my other devices can, again, save the Hiby RS2. And again, I can only describe it as sounding physical and having a naturalness and a tactility that the other ones, again, they just don't have. And it just sounds real and again, natural. Voices, pianos, horns, guitars, they just simply sound the way they should. Nothing sounds processed or unnatural in any way. And that characteristic carries through into the treble as well. So just to kind of a side note, so one of the issues I've heard discussed when it comes to R2R sound is that there can be a trade-off of detail for naturalness. And in some cases I have noticed that. And I talked about this in my review of the RS2. But here's the thing, I don't feel like I'm missing much of anything in terms of detail and clarity with the FC6. Even when I was using my Cadenza 12s, the Let's Shure Cadenza 12, which is a very detailed IEM. Now moving into the treble, everything I said about the bass and mids, at least regarding how natural it is, also carries through into the treble as well. So cymbals and hi-hats sound very detailed and have very good sizzle and just have a very, again, natural presentation in general. And while it definitely doesn't fall into the hyper detail or analytical category, it does have more than enough treble detail for me. Now, other things I look for in the treble are air and atmosphere, and the FC6 has both of those in abundance. And as far as the overall treble presentation, it's very smooth, so it never ever gets to the point of sounding piercing or harsh or becoming fatiguing. Now, as for the technical capabilities of the FC6, it performs very well. Of course, that always heavily depends on the technical capabilities. I always say this of your IEMs or headphones, but if they give you a wide soundstage, then this will give you that wide soundstage. Same goes for layering, imaging, and instrument separation. If your IEMs or headphones do that well, then this will give you all of that. So then where does the FC6 land in terms of value? Well, as dongles go, this is definitely on the high end as far as price. And while I wouldn't necessarily say it's overpriced, because this is R2R done very well, I still wouldn't say it's a great value when compared to the competition, because while you may not get the R2R sound from pretty much every other USB DAC, again, save the RU6, you can still get excellent sound for much less. And while I personally might think it's worth the price to get the R2R sound in such a compact device, it may not be worth it to you. So then where does it land in terms of features and just pure sound performance when compared to my current favorite USB DAC, the BTR7? And the reason I'm just jumping straight to comparing it to my highest performing USB DAC is because I prefer the sound for sure of the FC6 over all of the other USB DACs that I have. And it wasn't until I finally got to the point of comparing these two, the BTR7 and the FC6, that I actually started having a difficult time determining which one was the better performer. And here's the thing, the BTR7 still has more power output, and it also has Bluetooth and both a 4.4 and 3.5 output. But if I'm only considering sound performance, I would put them on about equal footing. Because in terms of general performance, so clarity, transparency, dynamics, they're about the same. Where they differ is how they present the sound. The FC6's presentation is more analog, again, and natural sounding, while the BTR7 presents the sound in a more dynamic and exciting manner. But I love them both for their own unique styles of sound presentation. And I honestly can't say that I prefer one over the other, because both of them do a very good job of pulling me in and engaging me very, very quickly. So I'm just going to have to call it a draw, because their performance, again, is about the same, but they simply offer two different musical flavors, so to speak, to choose from that are both equally good. That being said, the FC6 is expensive, and while it may not be the best value, it does give some of the best sound that I've heard, and for sure the most natural sound that I've heard in a USB style dongle DAC. Bar the RU6, because I haven't heard it. So as things stand right now, the FC6 is the first USB style DAC to come along and nearly dethrone my beloved BTR7. And to be honest, I was ever so close to just giving it to the FC6 because it's that good. But do I recommend the FC6? 100%, because again, it is that good. So that concludes my review of the Hiby FC6. If you're new to the Gazaudio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further with your support, we also now have a Patreon. I'll make sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please like this video. Please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.